Does the pursuit of personal growth require us to change who we are? Can we change in the ways we wish, or are we at the whim of the world around us? Join us here, in this moment, as we explore how to make meaningful, lasting changes while still accepting ourselves just as we are.
For those dominoes to fall. And I like the Suzuki Roshi quote. It's probably one of my favorite quotes. That you're perfect just the way you are, and there's room for improvement. And so when I consider that, like with change in mind, right? Well, if you're perfect just the way you are, then it kind of it messes with that idea of change a little bit. I mean, how else could you be but the way that you are now, based upon your experiences, your circumstances, physically, and then also just experientially. But then the second part of it, you're perfect just the way you are, and there's room for improvement. That kind of posits the idea that there will be change. And I think it's true, because as we were talking about earlier, we change as we encounter the world, as we grow, as we age, as we see more things. We're always changing in response to what we encounter. And so I think that second part of that quote, and there's room for change, is that we're guaranteed to change just based upon our experiences of the world. But what will that change be? And in what way can we make that change alleviate the suffering of ourselves and others? And in what way can we make it toward the direction of those values that we really hold dear? And so I think the joke of that, of course, you're perfect just the way you are, and there's room for change, is that how can we kind of guide that change, or be comfortable with that change, and allow it to be something that supports our growth and the change of the world around us in the direction we'd like it to go. And I don't think there's an answer for it, but I think if we're open to the idea that we will change, and that we're also just right the way we are, I think that's almost enough.
A lot of strength comes from like just being aware that the change is going to happen. Like, don't lose sight of the fact that you are perfect at just the way you are, but be aware of the changes that are happening in your environment, why they're happening, how you're letting them impact you. And that, I think, will help you be able to, right, give that domino space if it were to fall, or like decide how to absorb that energy, if to absorb it at all in the first place.
And there's some freedom there, because I've known you a long time. And if you think back to who you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I don't know about you, but I had no clue. I think back, I'm like, man, that version of myself all that time ago, had no idea. But now I have it figured out. Of course, I'm perfect just the way I am. Suzuki Roshi said it. I'm perfect just the way I am now. But back then, 10 years ago, I had no clue. But I also know in 5 or 10 years, and I look back at who I am now, I'm going to go, man, can't believe it.
Well,
I had no clue.
I mean, I think that's a great also reason to give ourselves grace, like who we were before, because we were perfect just the way we were back then as well. We were still changing, so yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I enjoy, I'm not always able to do it, but I do like the idea, for those of us that have difficulty with change, this idea of changing just because I think we do get caught up in like this cycle of reactivity. We're not in that responsiveness cycle, or allowing things to occur without necessarily giving a big response or any response at all. Letting them fall, as you said. But I think it's hard to enact that change. It's hard to find our way to the change that we want to see, because we're caught up in things. And so one of the things that I've done that works for me, and I think a lot of other people too, is finding something that we can change that's not a big deal, and changing that thing just because I can. Because I think a lot of times when we do try to actually make a change in our own lives and our own experiences, we pick the stuff that counts for us, that's important for us to change, that we want to have change. That might be a health thing. It could be a habit that is costing money or is unhealthy, and so we pick those biggies because those are the ones that we're motivated to change. But because they're so heavy, there's so much gravity to them that they end up being difficult.
Yeah.
and we fail.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer my phone. I'm going to put my phone aside. But what if something's happening? And that
Mhm.
that that lasts for a very short period of time, and then we're unsuccessful. It's the whole New Year's problem of picking those things, and then, well, I'm going to pick a biggie. I don't want to pick something small, because why
Mm.
would I try and change something small? But actually, what we know is, if we do pick something that's kind of an easy one to change, that's not too hard, that doesn't count for too much, we can get better at change.
Yeah. Prove
And
to yourself
so,
you do it. Like,
right, you can prove to yourself that you do. And then once you make that one smaller thing change, you can pick something bigger. And so for me, like, when I was looking at wanting to exercise more, over the years, I would do something like, all right, I'm gonna do a mile 3 times a week. I'll get up at like, 5 a.m. and do it. I mean, I already get up at 5 a.m., but like, I'll get out and run that mile, and I'll get in good shape. And man, I could do it for like 2 weeks, and then life got in the way, and it was hard, and I didn't like it. And it was too big of a change, I think.
yeah.
Um, but more recently, I started doing 1 minute of a plank every day. And I was able to do that because it wasn't too big of a deal. It was still health related, but it was a super easy lift. It was a small change. And then I could keep adding to it. And now I have a whole morning routine, but I had to start with something small that I could just do and throw away. And I knew that at first it didn't even count for anything.
Mhm.
You know, Actually, I don't think I even did a minute plank. I mean, I was pretty weak.
Yeah.
I'm very strong now, of course.
Of course. You were perfect back then when you couldn't do a minute. And now
Yeah,
you just learned from
there was a lot of room for change there. Um, but starting with something small that
Mhm.
doesn't even count at all. And I'm my example right there was the health one, but it could just be, you know, I'm going to do something even smaller than that. I'm going to make sure that I'm locking the door right when I walk in the door every time, or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a small, simple thing that you can do that doesn't count for anything,
Mhm.
but just taking control of something that you can change in your environment.
Yeah.
That's easy, and you have opportunities for practice.
Mhm.
By making that change happen, you can then get good at actually doing something on purpose, responsive, where something else is not something you're reacting to. And you can actually enact change and get good at that. And then you can start either adding to that thing or adding things in that you then want to change because you're better at it and you've had practice at it.
Yeah.
So that's like, I guess, my parting thought on, like, how do we take all these things that are going on? I can't say put away the phone. I can't say don't react to the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say do your best, but like, don't beat yourself up about it. But instead, find something you can change. Find your values, um, and see if you can respond based on those. But really, it's about finding that one thing you can change and then build.
Yeah.